Do we have any public comments? Okay, we'll call this meeting to order, Mag. Let's see. Doc, can you read the vision statement and mission statement, please?
Yes, vision statement, world-class schools for world-class students. And our mission statement is the North Rock School District and the community will provide for achievement, accountability, acceptance, and the necessary assets in the pursuit of each student's educational success.
Thank you. I have the roll call, please.
Cindy Temple,
Here.
Dr. Redis,
Here.
Natalie Wonka, J.T. Zakreski, Angela Parson-West,
Present.
Dorothy Williams,
Present?
Tracy Steele.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Second?
We sent it out. I didn't.
All in favor?
But I can get you one.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
know after kind of, you know, that's what I'm saying. Those were the days, Springdale, Arkansas. I attended
So,
Scipio.
do I need to say no action taken? Okay. Are you ready to give an explanation?
Just a point of clarification. So,
There we go.
but does the board have to say why
We're just,
we were in?
No action was taken, and then referred.
no action taken. Okay. So, unless you want to
Yeah,
say
I'll
that
just
now,
make
okay.
that point of clarification. Sure.
Okay.
Get my stuff. So, before we kind of move on, I wanted to just have a point of clarification to our community and our employees on a recent change of practice as it relates to executive closed session. So the board as an entity, just to clarify, the board as an entity, as a governing body, is the only part of our organization that can actually employ an individual. The superintendent makes recommendations based upon staff and makes a recommendation to the Board of Education for those individuals that we hire then to legally be hired with a contract. So as that legal authority, you know, that the superintendent recommends candidates for employment but can't actually hire them. And that certainly comes from the Arkansas Handbook, school board members, as well as the North Little Rock School District Policy 1.7, which talks about the powers and duties of the board that employing upon the recommendation of the administration, staff, and by written contract, the staff necessarily for the proper conduct of the schools. Also in Policy 1.4A, which is meetings of the board in executive session, that the board and the superintendent have the purview to go into private or closed discussions by the board, which may occur as part of a regular or special meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment. No resolution or agreement or motion considered in the executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public session and presents that item for vote of its membership, which we will do later on in our action item. And so I wanted to come with that clarification because we've had some recent challenges of individuals that has been communicated in the media that they've already been hired before the board has had the opportunity to discuss and to then make that recommendation and then that formal approval in public. So I just wanted to publicly make that statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, we are ready to do the board member and superintendent involvement.
Yes, ma'am. So 5.1 starts with our board members. So if there's any board members that wish to discuss their community involvement.
It's the summer.
I know my list isn't that long either, so I'll go. On June 24th, I did attend the service of Jared Allen. If you remember, that was a young man that had tragically passed away, and I was there to support our community in our Indian Hills during a very difficult time. On June 28th, I attended the state board meeting in which we presented our virtual Academy Learning 2.0 program that was approved. On July 1st, I had a great opportunity to meet with our North Little Rock Chamber, with Mr. Owens and Mr. Birch, as well as Blake Forte. And really, it's around the vision of the Argenta arts community and the redevelopment of economic jobs and really the vision and how we can partner to create training and create housing. So I'm very excited to be a part of that conversation on behalf of our school district. On July 8th, I did have the opportunity to discuss with CPPC and the reorganization plan, and I'll talk about that a little later today. Also, on today, July 5th, I had the opportunity to was invited to speak with Ms. Steffens from the Arkansas Environmental Education Association. Had invited me in to provide some feedback, and they've asked me to come and speak at their conference in July about advocating for environmental education. And then Mr. Brown and I were in state-required financial training all day today. So there's my report.
Thank you. So do we have anyone from the CPPC or LPPC to present tonight?
They left the
There's-
report for us.
Correct.
Okay.
There's no report to be presented, correct,
Okay.
Mister? Okay.
Okay. So we are on to information items?
Yes, so our first and our only information item is 7.1, which is the 2021-2022 financial review, and I'll ask that Mr. Brown, my colleague, our CFO, as well as Mr. Scott Beardsley, our financial advisor, come and do a little bit of fiscal forecasting to our board and our public. Mr. Beardsley, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hopefully what we're going to go through this evening is familiar to most of you. It's the same format that we've used when we update you either during a workshop or a board meeting. So my plan is to go through fairly quickly, but I'm always glad to pause if you want to dig into something a little bit deeper. So the first thing we want to look at is your assessed value. You know, that's the tax base that you're allowed to charge taxes on. Here in the community, Arkansas school districts can only raise revenue from their community through a millage rate, which is applied to the tax base, and it's broken into three categories. The district had approximately a $15 million increase in the real estate, up to $597 million, so I'm reading the blue shaded line, going from left to right. Personal property was up $3 million. So if you look back over the last several years, this is a category the district and most school districts and taxing entities in the state have struggled with, in that values, particularly for used cars, were inconsistent. The state addressed the issue last year by changing the vendor that provided that information. So most of you are going to have a little bit of a shock personally when you have your vehicle valued, because if you're not aware of it, used car values are up considerably over the last year, and the state uses real-time values for your car. So if you have a 2017 Toyota Camry and those are now worth more this year than they were last year, then your taxes will go up. So it will be to the benefit of the school district, but not to us as individual taxpayers. But hopefully that will be more consistent and we'll get off the roller coaster we've been on personal property values. So you're up $3 million for this year. And then utilities and carriers is up a little bit to $66.9 million, giving the district an increase in your tax base of $20 million for a total of $820 million. So if you remember, in Arkansas, we assess at 20% value. So that means that everything in the district is worth a little over $4 billion for fair market value. You take 20% of that, and that's your $820 million you get to charge taxes on. 1 mil, which is 0.001 times 820 million, you can just change the second comma to a decimal, means that if you ask the taxpayers for 1 mil in North Little Rock, it generates $820,000 that you can use to run the school district. When we talk about the funding formula in a little bit, keep in mind that the state is trying to balance out the poorest school district that brings in $30,000 per mil, North Little Rock that brings in $820,000 per mil, and the wealthiest school district that brings in over $2 million per mil. So when we talk about your wealth, some of that is going to be relative to the size of the school district and the number of students that you educate, but your tax base for this coming school year is $820 million. On the next page is your tax rate. That's what's multiplied towards the tax base. And in the blue line, the district is at 48.3 mils. That's what the voters approved when we started the major campaign, and those are on the books through the year 2043. When I come back up later for action items, the board will be asked to approve your proposed budget, and the tax rate will be the same rate that's currently on the books. And I will, if I don't say it then, I'll say it, remind you now, that if the voters defeat the millage in November of '21, there is no change in your millage. When a millage is defeated, it reverts to the previously approved millage. And so even if the voters vote no every November for the next 20 years, your millage will not change, because once it was approved, it will stay in effect until a change is approved. The other thing to keep in mind about millage is the lowest millage in the state is around 28 mills. The highest millage in the state is now 54 at Earl, and the state average is a little over 38. So you can see kind of where you fall in that range. Next page is collection. Believe it or not everybody pays their taxes in the school